live from the Nutter Butter TikTok page headquarters, aka my garage. This is the Silver Underground Podcast. This is the weekly show where I take a look at forgotten, unknown, or critically panned films and decide if it is worth your time or not. Am I qualified to do such a thing? Not really. I kind of just do this for fun, but here we are, and here you are. How's it going? So, just to jump right into it, let's just jump into the housekeeping. First, as you would probably notice if the three people that are actually following the show, there wasn't an episode last week, and that's because two reasons. One, the wife and I caught like some stomach bug that's going around, so we were both sick. She got it way worse than I did, but there was that going on. Plus, we had a camping trip come up last Friday, and when both of us were feeling better, we were more focused on getting ready for that and going camping. So I didn't want to overload myself this week, so I figured it's okay, whatever, put it out this week. So here we are. Also, I listened to a little bit of last week's episode, or a couple weeks ago episode, and I completely forgot to mention that it was a fan request episode. So Van Helsing was a fan request, and it was requested by my wife. Surprise, surprise. I know I thought I might have said this is a fan request for my wife, yada, 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 because I mentioned before that my wife really wanted to watch it. So that, I believe, is it for housekeeping. So let's jump into the news and weekend box office. Sip of my Gatorade. I bet that sounded fucking great. We don't keep a lot of like juice and sodas in the house, and so when we get sick, we'll buy like the little Gatorades and some ginger ale. So it's like the only time where we can kind of like splurge on some juice and shit. So the weekend box office for September 13th, the weekend of September 13th, which was last week. We're not going to do 2 weekends ago because I just don't, there's no point. But the top five, we got a lot of movies that came out last week, and I'm not going to bother trying to count it, but there's a lot. So, top five. At number 5, we have Reagan, the Ronald Reagan biopic. What is the... Oh, it grossed $2,009,000, so $2.9 million last week, bringing its total gross to $23 million. And it's been in theaters for 3 weeks. It was number 3 last week, so it dropped down significantly. Number 4 is Am I Racist? This is a new entry. It brought $4.5 million into the box office this weekend. I have never heard of this movie. I don't know what this is about. A man investigates diversity, equality, and inclusion practices, exposing absurdities through undercover social experiments. So, it says it's a comedy drama. Documentary, sorry. So, interesting. It seems like lately there's been a lot of, especially for the summer, there's been a lot of like lower unknown movies coming out in theaters, and like the big movies are just being completely shunned, except for like a couple. But yeah, that's your number 4, Am I Racist? Number 3 is a bit of a shock to me. It's Deadpool and Wolverine. It was number 2 last week. It brought in $5.2 million, bringing its total gross, Jesus Christ, to $621 million. Been in theaters for 8 weeks. I'm surprised it's down to number 3. I figured it would be number 2, but I guess it's been it's been in theaters for 2 months now, so fuck, I guess it makes sense. After a while, it's going to drop off. So number 3 was Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 2 is Speak No Evil. This is another new release. This is that James McAvoy like thriller movie. The trailer looked pretty interesting. I'll probably catch it if it goes on like Netflix or HBO or something. But Speak No Evil brought in $11.3 million for its first week. Universal Pictures put this one out. So, pretty cool. All right, number 2 is pretty admirable. But number 1, and it doesn't really surprise me that it lost to this one. Number 1 is Beetlejuice, the Tim Burton sequel. When did the first one come out? Was it like the early 90s? I don't know. But Beetlejuice brought in $51.3 million. It was number 1 last week as well, so it's been number 1 for a couple weeks, bringing its total gross to $187 million. So, good for Warner Brothers. I know that this was a highly anticipated sequel. Hugely anticipated sequel, actually, for... was it 25 years or something? I don't know. But that's your top 5. I guess I'll just go down. So number 6 was The Killer's Game. That's another new release. I think that's that Dave Bautista movie. 7 was Alien Romulus. 8 is It Ends With Us. 9 is The Forge. And number 10 is God's Not Dead. In God We Trust, whatever the fuck that is. I think that's like the 3rd or the 4th one. Jesus Christ, they're still making those movies. But yeah, there is your top 5 with a little bit of top 10 sprinkled in there. It's cool to see a little bit of change finally after like the last couple of weeks that I was doing this. I started to feel like it was getting a little stale because it was just Deadpool and Wolverine and Alien at like the top 1 and 2 spots. So cool to see some movement. Cool to see some smaller releases breaking through to the top 5. So let's jump right in to the news now. Like I said before, there was no episode last week, so there should be a ton of news. Well, because I didn't do an episode last week, I didn't bother noting any news articles or anything interesting really coming out. So it's a bit of a short week, or a slow news week, but there's a few things that I remembered from last week, as well as been reported on this week that I want to talk about. So first, I know I mentioned I don't want to talk about trailers too much, so I'm not going to get too much into it, but there are 2 trailers that I wanted to mention. So the first one, which was released sometime last week, is Leigh Whannell's Wolfman trailer. So Leigh Whannell, he famously was one of the producers or the writers, I think he was producer as well, for Saw, the first 3 Saw movies. He was also Adam in Saw 1. He directed Upgrade, which is a pretty cool sci-fi action movie. Definitely check that one out. And The Invisible Man. He directed The Invisible Man, which for a classic horror remake was pretty solid. I mentioned in Van Helsing that Universal, they're trying so desperately to have a Universal monster universe. They tried with The Mummy. They clearly tried with Van Helsing. They want to make it like an action universe. They want the Avengers with horror monsters, classic horror monsters. And look, anything can work if it's written well, but whatever the fuck they're doing over there, it's not working. But with the Invisible Man remake, it was just straight horror thriller, and it was good. It had a decent story to it, had very good acting. It was very suspenseful. It touched on some pretty sensitive issues. And he's directing The Wolfman. If he does the same thing he did with The Invisible Man, they can easily find a way to connect these films together. Maybe do a Creature from the Black Lagoon movie. That would be pretty cool. I love Creature from the Black Lagoon. Maybe a Frankenstein. And, just bring them all together in one movie. I don't know how. I'm not a writer. But, they got more money than God, so they can figure it out, right? Right? I don't know. So that's the first trailer. Second trailer is the Piglet slasher movie. This is part of the Pooniverse, which is a Winnie the Pooh slasher universe. So I want to say it was 2-3 years ago. The characters of Winnie the Pooh went into public domain. And of course, people being people, there was a slasher movie made immediately after it for $5 for their budget. And I mean, it's about as good as you expected it to be. But yeah, they're making a Winnie the Pooh 2 now because it was popular enough online. They're making a Piglet movie, which the trailer released for, and they're also supposed to be coming out with like a Killer Tigger movie, I think, a Killer Bambi movie, whatever Disney characters, or at least that were associated with Winnie the Pooh, are going to be slasher characters, and they're just going to be connected in the same universe. I am all for that. Let's fucking do it. Why the fuck not, right? So that's happening. If you want to check it out, go ahead and check it out on YouTube. I didn't bother watching it. I watched the Wolfman trailer, but I didn't bother watching the Piglet movie because I know exactly. It's a fucking Piglet slasher movie. You know exactly what you're getting into. So those are the two trailers I wanted to talk about. Next was an interesting article. I was honestly waiting for this one, but Transformers and G.I. Joe crossover film confirmed as next live action film, and the script is in development. This is coming from maxblizz.com. So for the people that saw the last Transformers movie, whatever it was called, the Extinction or whatever, I don't know, Rise of the Beast, that's what it was called. Transformers Rise of the Beast. At the end of that, spoiler alert for anybody who cares, there was a G.I. Joe tease, and it's been long, I wouldn't say speculated, but I know Hasbro has said that they've wanted to join the Transformers and G.I. Joe movies together for the longest time. I want to say since the first G.I. Joe came out, whenever the fuck that was. That was like 2007, maybe. But yeah, the script is in development. Honestly, I'm all for it. Why the fuck not? I don't know how they can be connected. Who's going to be the main villain? Are they going to fight the Decepticons, or are they going to fight Cobra? I don't know. Are the Decepticons going to join forces with Cobra, which means that the Autobots and G.I. Joes have to join forces? I don't know, but again, all for it. I'm here for it. It sounds like the right amount of cheese for me, and this one actually might get me to the theater. I haven't seen a Transformers movie since the third Transformers, and I have not seen the G.I. Joe movies in fucking forever, but this might be like the Godzilla versus King Kong equivalent of cheese for me, where I'm just for it. I don't know. It's so ridiculous. I love it. And that is all I could find for the news. There's, of course, always articles happening right now, but those were the ones that I found interesting, that I had some kind of opinion on. So let's get right in to the reason you guys are all here. My voice, I said here really wrong. Take a sip of my Gatorade real quick. So, last week we spun the wheel and it landed on Ed Wood. From 1994, Ed Wood, an ambitious but troubled movie director, Edward J. Wood Jr. tries his best to fulfill his dreams despite his lack of talent. This is a biopic of an actual director named Ed Wood, who was notorious, I guess, for just making these terribly low-budget, awful films that fall under the "it's so bad it's good" category. I'm pretty sure some of you might have heard of like Plan 9 from Outer Space. That's one of the many movies that he's made. But this is directed by Tim Burton, which just when people talk about Tim Burton, this movie is never mentioned at all. Like, what's the first movie you think of when you think of Tim Burton? Probably Beetlejuice, especially since the new one just came out. We got Beetlejuice, we got Nightmare Before Christmas, even though Tim Burton fans are out there, he didn't actually direct it, he produced it. It's a Tim Burton movie, okay? Edward Scissorhands, Big Fish, probably. You know, this movie is never talked about, and honestly, that's a huge disservice to this movie because I'll get into it, but this is honestly one of his better movies. This movie stars Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi, Sarah Jessica Parker as Dolores Fuller, Patricia Arquette. I'm pretty sure I just butchered her first name. I can't read. Jeffrey Jones, G.D. Spalding, just a whole bunch of great actors. Vincent D'Onofrio has a small part in it. Bill Murray has a pretty small role, or a bigger role, I guess, but lots of big actors. I'm sure they were small at this time, but yeah, just what did I think about this movie? I'm glad you asked. This movie was a fucking joy to sit through. I fucking love this movie, okay? It's very Tim Burton-y feeling, and before you guys kill me for what I'm about to say, I'm not the biggest Tim Burton fan. Okay, I like Edward Scissorhands. That's a cool movie, and the first two Batman movies, the Michael Keaton movies, are really cool. But I've never really been a fan of like Nightmare Before Christmas. He didn't direct that one. I don't give a shit. Never really been a fan of it. I never liked Corpse Bride. The Alice in Wonderland remake was fucking atrocious. Just not his biggest fan. His style isn't for me, and I know that he has his diehard fans, and that's cool. It's a cool style. It's just not for me. And this movie definitely has the Tim Burton feel, but it's very pulled back. This feels like a normal movie that Tim Burton just so happened to direct. Now, stuff like the beginning title sequence, it's going through like a graveyard, and on the tombstones, there's like the actors' names on it. Very Tim Burton feeling. It's also very much in the style of an Ed Wood movie. I think, I had a list of his movies up somewhere, but it might have been Plan 9 from Outer Space. Started out like that, where the title sequence goes through a graveyard with tombstones saying the actors' names. I'm not 100% sure. It's been fucking forever since I've seen Plan 9 from Outer Space. But stuff like that. There's also a sequence where a little later on in the movie they go to a carnival and they go to the haunted house ride. Super Tim Burton. It's like he just had to just release it all into one scene and then just get back into directing a movie, you know? Like, I have to stop the film and just put these cartoony, scary monster images everywhere on the screen. which, by the way, it didn't really stop the film during that scene, but I'll get to it when I get to it. So, yeah, the movie is very Tim Burton-y feeling at times. But it also, again, like the movie that, it's based upon, or the creator that it's based upon, Ed Wood, it does feel very low budget and very like me and my friends making a movie type of feel. It's also shot in black and white, which is very much the time of the film. This movie takes place in the 1950s, the early to late 50s, and shot black and white, and it's done beautifully. The cinematography in this movie uses black and white in a way that it's incredibly artistic and just beautifully done. There's a bunch of scenes where they use the negative space, the black space, to like center the subjects of the screen, and it's pleasing to look at. Even though everything's black and white, it's incredibly pleasing to look at. And there's tons of scenes, well, couple scenes actually, where they're in a movie theater and the lights dim down and you just see the only part that's white are the top of the heads, like the hair of everybody in the seats. It's done beautifully. It looks like a painting almost. There's a lot of stuff like that. I love the use of the black and negative spaces, and it's done artistically. And honestly, the Tim Burton style does work for me in those few scenes too. So just a lot of it works for me. And it's mostly the look of this movie. It's just so pleasing to look at. This is another fall vibey Halloween type of movie where Van Helsing is just a straight up Halloween movie. This is definitely something that I would put on around Halloween, in October, even November, just when the leaves are turning brown and I want to put on a nice sweater or something like that. It's cold outside. What movie should I put on? And I don't feel like watching a horror movie, which never happens. It's always horror movies. But if I don't feel like watching a horror movie, or if my wife doesn't feel like watching a horror movie, this is a movie that I would put on. It feels very, he directs like schlocky horror films, so that could also add to it. So yeah, just the look of this movie, I can't praise enough. It's just beautiful. There's another scene later on where it's a night shoot and they have to, in order to light the scene in the area they're working at, they have like their cars parked around them and the headlights are on. And it's cool because it shows, like back then they didn't have the budget. They didn't have any fucking money doing these movies to properly light a shot, especially a night scene. So they had to use their car headlights to light wherever they are. But also just visually, it looks cool. There's like a cool look to it while everyone's doing their thing, and then you just look in the background, you see just car lights in the background. I can go on and on about how much I love the cinematography in this movie, but I'm going to move on. Johnny Depp is great in this movie. Everybody in this movie acts like the hyper Hollywoodized like voice. I don't know how to say where everybody talks like this. Hey, yeah, hey, ha. Everybody kind of talks like that in this movie. And I mean, that's very much how, at least those movies back in the days, that's how they spoke and that's how they talked. Everybody acts like this in this movie, and it's very, very of the 1950s. It's not super over the top, and I mean, it's over the top, but it's like the point of the movie where it doesn't go overboard. You know what I mean? I I like Johnny Depp a lot in this movie. It's weird. I mean, he's playing a character, but he's not in like crazy makeup. It's weird seeing Johnny Depp actually act. You kind of forget that he's an actor, and he has acted. He has acted in good movies, and he has had good roles before. This is one of his good roles, in my opinion. Maybe not his best role, but I liked him a lot in this. Martin Landau, though, completely steals the fucking show as Bela Lugosi, which I didn't know until prior to watching this, that Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood became friends, and this movie shows their friendship, and there's even like an arc, a really nice kind of cute arc with Bela Lugosi, because at this time in Bela Lugosi's life, he's a bit of a washed up actor. Nobody really cares about Dracula anymore, and he's just living alone with his dozens of dogs in his house somewhere in North Hollywood. And there's a nice little arc where he gets a little bit of fame through this journey with Ed Wood, and he gets a little bit of that fame back, and it's pretty cool. There's a funny running joke in this movie where people didn't even know he was still alive anymore. Everybody thought he was dead. It was funny. He steals the show every single time. And yeah, every character in this movie, they played their characters well, and they played their characters of the time. It's, again, not overboard, but it's over the top in an intentional kind of way. This movie, Tim Burton does a good job at setting up the glitz and the glamour of Hollywood. So, which is kind of the point. I mean, like, through Ed Wood's eyes, in reality, he is broke. He has absolutely nothing to his name except these terrible, shitty fucking movies that, at the time, nobody respected him for. If he were to come out now and come out with these movies in the age of TikTok and the age of YouTube and just how things go viral, he would have been a fucking millionaire or something. He would have blown up in some sort of way. So, through his eyes, he is just working towards his dreams. He wants to be like Orson Welles. And at the time, Orson Welles was the only, filmmaker who also wrote and sometimes starred in his films. Even though I think, didn't Hitchcock do that? I'm not sure. So, anyway, he looked up to Orson Welles. He wanted to be just like Orson Welles, but he didn't have any talent. And he, that's just what it came down to. This man didn't have any fucking talent. He was really good at conning people into getting what he needed, getting money. There's one point in the movie where he convinces a church to fund one of his films, but the only I think the only way that the church would do that is if him and his crew get baptized. And Bill Murray even has a funny line where Bill Murray says, only you can get your friends baptized for some fucking movie. I keep getting sidetracked. But yeah, so through Ed Wood, Hollywood he's looking through Hollywood with rose-tinted glasses, even though this is a black and white film. But Tim Burton does a good job at also sprinkling in little bits of reality in this movie. There's in between scenes where it's a little over the top and just super Hollywood, hey, give me that cigar. Hey. There's pretty good scenes put in where it shows the reality of what's really going on. Like Bela Lugosi, at this time in his life, he is a morphine junkie, and he's shooting up morphine, and I'm pretty sure they mentioned he's shooting up heroin, maybe. But there are scenes where, Ed Wood's trying to get the the crew to do whatever they're doing, and the makeup guy is working on Bela Lugosi's hands, and he turns his wrist over and sees the track marks. And they don't make a big deal out of it, and they move on to the next show or to the next shot. There's a lot of scenes like that, and then it gets right back into the overacting and the, just the Tim Burton-y Hollywood 1950s whatever. And those type of stuff, there's other scenes like that. That's one that comes to my mind, but those kind of scenes, they work well as a counter to what's happening in the movie, which is just this glitz and glam Hollywood shit. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more I could really say. I didn't take a lot of notes during this movie because I was just so into the movie. I don't want to do like a play-by-play like I usually do. I just want to review the movie for what it is. And if I have anything negative to say about this movie, it would be that it is a little too long. I do feel like it sort of drags a bit at certain points. I want to say like the beginning of the third act. It does feel like, oh shit, this is a 2-hour long movie. I personally feel like this could have been a maybe hour 40 movie, maybe hour 50, or just trim off like a few scenes. I don't know. I love this movie though. I completely love this movie. I would definitely say that this movie is worth your time. Just putting that right now. I absolutely adored it. This was a gem to watch, and I hadn't seen this movie since I had to have been in junior high, and I was just getting into movies. This one, it's very akin to The Disaster Artist, if you've seen The Disaster Artist with James Franco. More or less the same movie. This movie obviously came out first, but it's very funny. There's a lot of funny moments in here. There's a lot of real moments, like I said. It sucks you in. It's pleasing to look at. And the end, especially when you learn about the, just the tragic life of Ed Wood after the events of this movie. He became a raging alcoholic. He had to resort to directing and writing pornos, which dove him into a depression. And unfortunately, he passed away before his films were ever recognized as a it's so bad it's good type of category of films. Like I said, if these movies were to come out today, he would have probably have been big in some sort of way. Maybe not like Tommy Wiseau, possibly Tommy Wiseau. He was a very odd character. But, he would have been... There would have been fans. There's fans now of his movies. There would have been fans today. But overall, Ed Wood, huge thumbs up. Highly, highly, highly recommend. I saw this movie on Amazon. I rented it for $3, I think, which well worth it in my opinion. I would buy this movie on DVD if I could. Which I never see this movie ever on like shelves, thrift stores, book off, anything like that. But it's available on Amazon Prime. And let me get into the reviews. So this movie has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is fair. An 88% audience score. Again, fair. And a 71% Metacritic score. So, yeah, very good movie. Highly recommend. This is definitely one of Tim Burton's underrated films, in my opinion. I couldn't get enough of this movie. I wanted to watch it again. Honestly, I think this might be a yearly movie, maybe. I don't know. I definitely want to watch this one again and see if I still like it. Highly recommend. So, it sucks. Whenever I like a movie, the episodes seem shorter. But that is the episode. Now, I would spin the wheel, but I got another fan request. So let me pull up the movie. It is called Arcadian. This one is requested. It's a Nicolas Cage movie, so we're in for a fucking treat with this one. So that's going to be next week, Arcadian. So look out for that one. And one more thing. If you like this episode and you want to keep up with the show, you can follow me on Instagram at the Silver Underground PC or Silver Underground Podcast. There's no "the" in front of it. I don't know why I said that, but follow me on Instagram. That's the main hub that I mostly keep updated. I'm also on Twitch. I've been doing a few streams here and there. I don't really have a schedule right now, but I would like to keep it to like maybe a Saturday, Sunday type of thing. But I just did one yesterday on Tuesday, which was pretty cool. So check me out on Twitch if you want to hang out and whatever. You can also follow me on Spotify. If you're already listening to this, you're probably on Spotify, or you're on YouTube at Silver Underground Podcast. And that is the show. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys for listening.